Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another segment in our Healthy Heart, Healthy Brain series. And today we're going to talk about which tests can save your life. Okay. And this is based on the book Healthy Heart, Healthy Brain by Dr. Bradley Bale and Dr. Amy Doneen. My name is Linnea Baker. I am a board certified family nurse practitioner, and I am so excited to get to be here. And hopefully you will get value out of this, and it will impact your life and those that you love. All right. So the first thing we want to talk about is ultrasound. And most of you know what an ultrasound is. For ladies, if you had an ultrasound when you were pregnant, it's where they use the wand and the warm gel, and they do a scan of your belly to see your baby. This may be done on your neck for your carotid arteries. It may be done on your heart, which is called an echocardiogram. They can do ultrasounds of your belly for other things other than looking at your baby. So an ultrasound is painless. It's inexpensive. It checks for this type of ultrasound that I'm talking about is looking at different types of vascular disorders, including peripheral artery disease, the PAD diagnosis, AAA, which is abdominal aortic aneurysms, and also plaques that could trigger a heart attack or stroke. So that's the type of ultrasound I'm talking about when we're looking at vascular disease. When we look at an ultrasound versus an X-ray, X-rays only detect calcified plaque, and calcified plaque is plaque that contains flecks of calcium. And we're going to talk about that shortly in this presentation for you guys. So there's three types of ultrasound tests when I talk about vascular screening. And there's two of them that are recommended by the Bale-Doneen method for vascular screening, but one of them is not recommended. So we have the carotid intima media thickness, the CIMT, and that's the ultrasound of your neck, but it's called a carotid intima media thickness, and we're going to go through what the difference is in that. The ankle brachial index, or ABI, is recommended. Now, the carotid duplex ultrasound, which just is scanning your neck arteries, and that's a typical one that a lot of people have had done if you've had heart disease, or sometimes if you have certain symptoms, they'll check your neck arteries. That one's not recommended for screening for vascular disease, okay? So when we look at the CIMT test, or the carotid intima media test, this one is FDA approved, and the test measures the thickness of the two inner layers of the carotid arteries, which are the intima and the media. And we're actually looking for plaque in the carotid artery wall between those two layers. Okay, so this is very specific. And we know that the carotid arteries are the arteries in your neck that supply the oxygen to your brain, neck, and face. Okay, so abnormal thickness of this, when you're using the CIMT test, if there's abnormal thickness, this is an early marker that you have increased risk of arterial disease. So it's an early sign, okay? This is where you can detect the disease at the earliest and most treatable stage in the neck. And it can also determine arterial age. That's powerful. I wanted to get this done because, well, we're going to go through who's recommended and who shouldn't get the test done, but mine, I fall under recommendations. And what's really cool is they can tell you what your artery age is. And that's because as we get older, our normal arteries will gradually thicken with age. However, some people will have accelerated aging of the arteries. So meaning your arteries are older than your actual chronological age in years. The CIMT test can actually identify atherosclerosis, right? And this is usually undetectable by other tests. So usually we can't see atherosclerosis in other tests that are only looking at blood flow and not at the actual wall. And we've talked about this earlier in our series. So please go back if you haven't seen the prior presentations, because we're building off of this every week. And there's other definite parts of the series that I think will benefit you guys. So scroll back through, and everything is pinned to the featured section of our Facebook group, or you can find it under my health and wellness, healthy living inside and out under my YouTube channel. Okay. So when we look at CIMT, we're looking for types of plaque, okay? And we also can find out when we do this test, if you've already been diagnosed with the disease, with carotid artery disease, we can find out if the current treatment plan that you're on is working. Now, soft plaque Okay, the soft plaque is the most dangerous plaque. If you guys remember earlier in this series, you can see soft plaque with a CIMT, the carotid intima media thickness test. You cannot see soft plaque on a regular carotid ultrasound test. All right, remember, soft plaque's the most dangerous because it's the most vulnerable, and it can really suddenly erupt like a volcano at any time if it's inflamed. And we talk about chronic inflammation and chronic disease over and over again in this platform. And we're going to talk about it again next week as well. And we also talked about it earlier in this series. And so if the soft plaque is inflamed and ruptures, that's the potential to lead to heart attack and stroke. Okay. So that's why this is so dangerous. Now, hard plaque is more stable because there's no lipid core. Okay. And it's like the volcano that's already erupted and is extinct now. And this indicates a stable, effectively treated disease. So the hard plaque is more stable, the soft plaque is more dangerous. When we look at CIMT testing, who do they recommend gets the test? Well, those with traditional coronary cardiovascular disease risk factors, CVD risk factors, those with red flags for heart attack, stroke, and dementia risk. And if you've already been diagnosed with any kind of arterial disease. So here's the guidelines. Patients with a 10-year risk for CHD or coronary heart disease at moderate risk, so 6 to 20%. Patients who are 30 or older who have metabolic syndrome. And I will tell you that there are a huge number of people in the United States in adult population. I think there's only about 10 to 12% of adults who are metabolically healthy. So really, there's so many of us with walking around in the United States with metabolic syndrome and don't even realize it or have some type of metabolic abnormality. Patients with diabetes or a family history of coronary heart disease. Now, I will tell you, we said coronary heart attack is the number one cause of death or mortality in the United States. And we've said before that over half the United States adult population is either diabetic or pre-diabetic, and most don't know. So this is a large number of people we're looking at that should be getting this test done. So if you have diabetes or family history of coronary heart disease, people with 2 or more of the following risk factors. If you have low HDL, which remember H is helper for good cholesterol. If you have a high LDL, LDL we said is the bad cholesterol. If you're diabetic, if you're a man who is 45 years or older, or women greater than or equal to 55 years old, or if there's a family history of early coronary heart disease. So that's a large number of people we're looking at that should be getting this test done. And this is crazy because all the years I worked in cardiology and electrophysiology, I told you I've been in healthcare for over 25 years. And the majority of my career was in cardiology and electrophysiology. And we were not doing these tests way back then. But again, I have not worked with cardiology patients in the last 10 years because my most recent experience was with pediatrics. So these are things that I want to educate you guys on, because if I'm not aware of it and I spent the majority of my career doing this, then I want to make sure you guys know what to be advocating for and what you should be getting to help diagnose, screen, test, and get you on the right track to prevent we want to prevent the heart attack and stroke. We want to find out early what's going on so we can get you on a treatment plan that's going to help heal you. And remember, when I talk about a holistic, healthy, and sustainable lifestyle, that is something that's part of every diagnosis. So whether you're walking around undiagnosed or you actually have the diagnosis, everybody needs to be on a healthy lifestyle. We shouldn't even call it a healthy lifestyle. It should be the way we normally live. Unfortunately, in the United States, as you guys know, and as I've said before, our culture is one of convenience and ultra processed food. 60 to 70% of the average American diet is ultra processed, and in kids it's higher. It's about 70%, and that's creating chronic inflammation. And we've gone through that, and we'll continue to cover that because gut health and metabolism is my passion. But remember, a healthy lifestyle is part of every age group and every diagnosis, whether you're healthy or diagnosed with a chronic disease. And that's why I'm doing this and in this space for education and coaching you on a healthy lifestyle than being in a traditional clinic. So now we look at the abdominal aortic aneurysm scan, called a AAA. This is something I actually used to work with patients with this, whether it was in the neurosurgical ICU at Scott and White in Temple, Texas. Now it's Baylor Scott and White. I also took care of patients in the vascular clinic and in the cardiology clinic when I would have to screen for these. So AAA is a weak or bulging area in the lower portion of the body's largest artery, and that supplies blood to the abdomen, pelvis, and legs. The bulging, I put the picture here to show you what a bulge looks like. That's the aortic arch. That is not where an abdominal aortic aneurysm is. It's actually in the abdomen, but it's in the abdomen, but the bulging looks like that in the blood vessel. So that's why I wanted to show you what bulging, what an aneurysm would look like in an arterial blood vessel. It's just that one's in the wrong place. Many think that this disease is for older male smokers. However, nearly half of the people that develop AAA are women, non-smokers, and under the age of 65 years old. We don't know the cause yet, but there are similar risk factors for AAA as there are for cardiovascular disease. And that is smoking, obesity, being diabetic, having high cholesterol, having high blood pressure, and genetics. When you look at this, other than genetics, all those risk factors are modifiable, meaning you can do something to lower your risk of these things. That is why I'm here. Part of lowering your risk is being on a healthy lifestyle, okay? Now, for an abdominal aortic aneurysm, who should get the test? Or aneurysm ultrasound, looking for screening, I'm sorry. Who should get the test? Everyone over 50 years old. If you're 40 years old and you smoke, if there's a family history of AAA, or if you're the 9p21 gene carrier, which is called the heart attack gene, we discussed that in an earlier series, in an earlier part of this series, but that does also increase the risk of peripheral artery disease and abdominal aortic aneurysm. Remember, abdominal aortic aneurysm is not up here by the heart. It's actually down lower in the belly, but that shows you the bulging of the actual aorta. So that's what it would look like, but in the belly. Okay, when we look at an ankle brachial index or an ABI, this test checks for peripheral artery disease. And if you have heart disease, there's a 42% probability that you'll have peripheral artery disease. And 90% of people with peripheral arterial disease or PAD or PAD are current or former smokers, guys. Up to 40% of people with PAD have no symptoms. So many people don't even realize they have the disease. And it's concerning because because peripheral artery disease or PAD, especially if it's untreated PAD, more than doubles your risk of heart attack and stroke risk. So very scary. This is atherosclerosis that is in the leg arteries, okay? What's scary about this is my mom has peripheral artery disease and she ended up having an amputation because of it. That's how serious this disease is. So this is why I'm passionate about educating you guys. This hits home. This is something that my own family has experienced, my own mom. And the more I can educate and help you guys, the better we can be at finding these things before it's too late. And unfortunately for her, it was too late and she ended up with an amputation. For an ABI or ankle brachial index, this is the test. It's really simple and painless. What we're doing is we're taking blood pressure measurements on each of your legs around your ankle, and they'll either use a stethoscope or an ultrasound probe to listen to the blood pressure to get the reading on your ankles. And then they'll do blood pressure readings in both of your arms, okay? And usually they'll also have you walk on a treadmill and do it again afterwards. The test takes about 15 minutes because with peripheral artery disease, you can see changes when you stress people by walking them on a treadmill and then repeat the test versus when they're at rest and at their best state. So sometimes you'll see compromise once they've been up and walking around. That's why a lot of people with peripheral artery disease, they start having symptoms with activity or exercise. The problem is for people like my mom who had other illnesses going on and was limited in her mobility, she had peripheral artery disease and didn't have the normal symptoms you would see because she was inactive. So that's the problem. And that's why it's so important to know when to get the screenings and to stay on top of this, because so many people don't have symptoms, but they already have the disease. So with the ABI test or ankle brachial index, who should get it? The people that should get this test are everyone 50 years and older, okay? So I'm getting close to that, but you should start screening for peripheral artery disease at 40 years old if you have risk factors, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, atherosclerosis, if you've been diagnosed with an abdominal aortic aneurysm, if there's a family history of cardiovascular disease, and also if you have the 9p21 gene carriers. So actually at 40 years old, I should have already been screened for this, okay? I've not yet. So guess what's going on my list of screenings, because I'm doing this for you guys, but I'm also educating myself. This is on one of the tests that I need to add to my list to get done. So persons with peripheral artery disease are at 6.5 times higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease, especially if their circulatory issues are undiagnosed and untreated. So we want to find these things and be detectives and get the screenings done to find them earlier, even before we're ever having any symptoms, because symptoms are usually much later in the disease. And then we want to aggressively treat through your provider, whoever your specialist is managing this for you. So when we do that, remember, again, you follow with your specialist. They will give you guidance on what's recommended based on your individual test results, and everybody's different. And so whatever's best for you in your situation, but holistic, healthy, and sustainable lifestyle is part of every diagnosis and every single age group. And even when you're healthy, because remember, a lot of times we don't even realize we have chronic disease because we don't have symptoms yet. Coronary artery calcium score, or the CACS. This is to look for atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries. Soft plaque occurs when you have that cholesterol and other fatty materials that build up in the arteries. And the body actually attempts to repair the plaque damage by taking the cholesterol out, or the lipid, and replacing it with collagen and calcium. See, our body's trying to heal us. So as the plaque is quote unquote healing, it's more dense and calcified. And that's what this test is looking for. So what does the CACS test check for? What it checks is it's using a CT scanner or the EBT, electron beam tomography, to check for flecks of calcium in the artery walls. And the results give you a calcium score. And that calcium score is a very strong predictor of risk of heart attack, regardless of your risk factors. So you could seem healthy and have no risk factors, and you'll still be able to find out kind of what your risk of having a future heart attack is at that point, in that snapshot in time, based on your calcium artery calcium score, coronary artery calcium score. Sorry, guys. I'm having trouble talking today. So CACS, who should get the test? So the evidence-based guidelines by the SHAPE Task Force, which is the Society for Heart Attacks Prevention and Eradication, advises screening with either the CACS, which is the coronary artery calcium score, or the CIMT. Remember, that was the carotid intima media thickness on the neck, but it's actually looking at the thickness. It's not a carotid ultrasound. Carotid ultrasound looks at blood flow. The CIMT looks at arterial wall thickness, which is more sensitive. And so it says advised to screen with either the CACS or the CIMT for almost all men 45 years old and older, and almost all women age 55 or older. The only exception is men and women in these age groups who are extremely low risk because they meet all of the following criteria: don't smoke, no history of smoking, total cholesterol below 200, blood pressure below 120/80, no diabetes, and no family history of cardiovascular disease. So actually, my husband falls in the category that he needs to get this screening done. So for him, I need to get him in and make a list of what each of us, our risk factors are, and what he needs and I need. And he's going to need this test done, actually. One of them, the CACS or the CIMT. So we'll be working on that, and I'll report later on what our findings are once we get in and get these tests done. So what about a traditional treadmill stress test, the TMST? Treadmill stress tests were super common when I was in cardiology, right? A lot of people are aware of these tests. Well, guess what, guys? The treadmill stress test for screening is unreliable, and it misdiagnoses up to 40% of patients, with the highest rate of misdiagnosis in women. So the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force issued evidence-based guidelines. That's what we all practice when we're in medicine and we're healthcare providers. They recommend against using the treadmill stress test for screening purposes. This is not a good tool for screening because it's missing too many people, especially in women. So when you're using a treadmill stress test, the arteries must be at least 70% blocked in order to quote unquote fail the treadmill stress test, which we know that's later in the disease. And we want to catch things early on. This is all about early awareness, early screening, early detection, and modifying our risk factors and being on a lifelong health journey so that we don't end up having a heart attack or stroke. So if we're already 70% blocked, if we haven't actually had a heart attack or stroke yet, we're a ticking time bomb, and that's too late in the game, guys. So the treadmill stress test is only looking for obstructive heart disease. And we know that the non-obstructive heart disease is the root cause in 86% of heart attacks. 86% of heart attacks are from non-obstructive heart disease. That's why we want to look at the arterial wall, not how much is blocking the blood flow only. So this is why this is so important. What about a carotid duplex ultrasound when they just look at the ultrasound of the carotid arteries in the neck? Remember, we talked about that earlier. That measures the blood flow through the carotid arteries, and it's looking for indirect signs of disease. So it's looking at a plumbing issue in the carotid arteries called carotid artery stenosis. But remember, this is not a great test. The better test is the CIMT, because that actually looks for the plaque inside the arterial wall. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, on their evidence-based guidelines for this test, they actually recommend against using the carotid duplex ultrasound for screening purposes. So just so you guys know what the evidence-based results are saying. So what are our action steps? We want to save a life. My whole goal is to educate, empower you to advocate for yourselves, help you understand the importance of a holistic, healthy, sustainable lifestyle, help you reduce risk factors, and help you find out what you have going on inside your body that you won't even be aware of way early in the game, so you can do things to be proactive and prevent the end stage of strokes and heart attacks and all the things that are debilitating and can actually cause you to not have high quality of life or even die, unfortunately, at an earlier age. So when we talk about let's saving a life, what do we want to do? Tell your friends what you've learned. Invite them to this group so they can see the presentation. They can see the series. They can take what they want from it. Tag 5 of your friends in the comments so they can watch this presentation. And you also need to invite them to the group so they can see the presentation. Because guys, together we can make a difference. I'm here to empower you, to educate you. Let's help take care of the ones we love most. Let's spread the word and get this education out there so you guys know what to advocate and do for yourselves. Guys, remember, I'm on a mission to positively impact your health and wellness through education and coaching to create generational health and a health span that equals your lifespan. More is caught than taught. Your children are watching. When you take action and you're proactive in your health and wellness, your children are watching, and it will trickle down and help them. And I know that the children in your life, however they've come into your life, are the most important to you and who you love the most. And you want them to be healthy and live a long, healthy life. Okay. If you guys want to have a free health consult with me, please reach out to me by commenting below or private messaging me. I would be absolutely honored to talk with you, do a health and wellness consult, and give you some recommendations based on what we find. Remember, the guidance in here is not to replace information from your personal healthcare provider, but it is to empower you to go advocate for yourself and know what the evidence-based guidelines are, and to get in there and take care of yourself so you live a long, healthy, high quality life. All right. The book I'm using is Healthy Heart, Healthy Brain by Drs. Bell and Dr. Doneen. I have nothing to do with the book other than I read it. I'm passionate about education and being proactive in this space about educating others on a health journey. And this is part of that health journey. We need to know what to be looking for and identifying it earlier. This book I got on Amazon. I highly recommend you guys grab it and read it. It's written for layman people, so people who have no medical background. It is very empowering. There is so much information in this book. I couldn't possibly cover it all. I'm only taking snippets, so you're going to want to read this book just to get the full depth of everything they offer. You can bring this book to your healthcare provider and show them what you're wanting done, because you have certain things that you know you need to get done based on your personal risk factors, and you can show them the book. of where you're getting it from and what the guidelines are recommending. So it's a powerful tool, guys, to go ahead and take with you. But until next week, I just want you to know, I hope everyone is safe. I hope you all got value out of this. And I'm grateful for each of you for giving me some of your valuable time. Now let's get out there and save some lives by bringing people into this group and sharing this, this presentation with them. Until next week, take care, guys.